Okay, so welcome. This is a motion graphics tutorial. I've recently seen this logo being used for Channel 5 Star, and well, this is it. So, the bit that we're going to look at is this last bit. Here we're going to try and get this effect of the logo kind of appearing. So here we go. So we're not going for the exact copy, but we'll go for something similar. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so the first thing I've done is I have drawn the 5 Star logo in Illustrator. Okay. What we need to do now is we need to kind of get some shapes ready to take in Cinema 4D, and we can get those to be the shapes that break up. We can draw it all in Cinema 4D if we want, but it will be a lot quicker to do this in Illustrator. So what I've done is I've drawn some random shapes. I've tried to not go too fancy. I've got a few stars, squares, circles, polygons, and so on. Okay, but what I've done is I've saved that as an AI file. Okay, if we go into Cinema 4D, we can open this Illustrator file. Just press OK, and it will open up our path. Okay, so the first thing is we need to get it facing the right way. So we'll rotate that 90 degrees. And the second thing is we need to get rid of all of these separate paths. So I'm going to select them all. I'm going to go Objects, Connect and Delete. Okay, what you will find is that this can give you this type of effect. Okay, if it does, what you need to do is you need to connect them one by one or in small groups. Okay, you'll usually find that somewhere along the line it will break them up. So you need to spend a fair bit of time making sure that works. Once you've got it sorted, okay, if I in fact I'll open it from here. If I open it fixed, okay, or fixed after a fashion, okay, it should look something like that. Okay, so what we have is our single spline looking like that. Okay, we don't worry about this line in the middle, we can get rid of that. So the first thing we need to do is give it some 3D shape. So we're going to create a loft NURBS. We're going to stick our spline into this. Okay, and just to show you, if I select everything that's in there, in fact let's go to there, you can see that it has got our shape, but when we make this editable you can see what it's going to do to the lines. Okay, we're going to have to spend a long time again cleaning up this mesh. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll make that editable, and in fact we'll just get rid of that and delete it. So now what we've got is we've got our mesh with some random lines. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to go around it and we are going to melt. Okay, if you want to use a command, it's there. If you don't, okay, the shortcut is U and Z. Okay, and you can see the type of time that this is going to take. Okay, what we want to do is we want to merge together the right segments. Okay, bearing in mind that we want to keep our original shapes. Okay, so don't merge everything. Okay, and we go through it, and once we are happy, we spent some time, we should have something that looks like that. Okay, if I go to points mode, you can see that what we've got is a fairly neat mesh with our shapes in. Okay, so the next stage is that we are going to get the knife tool and we're going to start breaking it up. Okay, this is mostly random. Okay, we just look at where we can draw some of these shapes. the only real piece of advice is to try and not have two different types of size polygons. So you're looking at either evening it out throughout the whole thing, or you just have various clusters of small and clusters of large polygons, but it needs to have some kind of pattern to it, otherwise it's the effect's going to be a little bit weird, a bit uneven. Okay, sorry about the flashing. Okay, so you can see how this is going. Once again, save time. If I go to this version here, this is what I've created. Okay, so what I've got is, if you look slightly down on it there, you can see that I've got a shape around the outside, which I've drawn as well. You've got the 5-star logo. Okay, you've got some random shapes in here, which I've filled in with the close polygon hole tool, if you haven't used that. And then for the rest of it, I've put knife cuts. Okay, and we've got a fairly random effect going on. Okay, so once we've got that, we are going to move on to the next stage. Okay, so the first thing is we're going to get a fracture object, and we're going to stick our mesh into that. Okay, so we're going to, first thing we need to do is we need to disconnect the polygons. Okay, so I'm going to get my selection tool, I'm going to go through these polygons and I'm going to select them all. Okay, now what I can do is I can go to right click and I can go to disconnect here, but what that's going to do is it's going to preserve groups, i.e. it's going to keep all of this as one object. So the first thing we need to do is go into the settings of the disconnect command. We need to make sure that the tick is out of preserve groups. Okay, it is on this one because I've done this before. Just make sure it's unticked. We click OK. Okay, now we are free to disconnect. We are now going to extrude our object. Okay, so we'll extrude it by a small amount. Okay, let's say 2. You can see what it's done there. The only thing we're not happy with is the fact that it is it's got kind of like a hollow effect on the bottom, so we just need to create caps and that will solid it out. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to convert each of these objects into each of these kind of extruded polygons into separate objects. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to go to mesh, conversion, polygon groups to objects. In fact, before I do that, I will just make sure, just by selecting everything, polygon groups to objects. Have a bit of a think, not too long. Okay, if you've got a slow machine, it may take a bit longer than that. And what we can see over on the right hand side is we've now got a null object, and inside that null object we've got all of our loft NURBS, okay, as separate objects. So we need to make sure that we get rid of this parent, so we delete without children, and now we've got all of our loft NURBS inside our object. Okay. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually include some motion graphics. So with our fracture object selected, we're going to go to effectors, and we're going to go to plane. Okay, so what you can see is, if I just zoom out, you can see the plane effect was in the centre. My mesh wasn't. Probably not good practice, but we'll get over it. Okay, if I switch the plane effector off, you can see what it's doing. is it's just moving the whole thing. Okay, and we can see down here that the reason for that is it's altering the position, okay, by 100 in the y-axis. Okay, that's not a massive issue at the moment. We're going to switch it in a sec. The first thing we need to do is we need to change the fall off. Okay, at the moment the fall off is set to infinite, which means that the whole thing is just going to move. And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to animate it. Okay, so we're going to turn this to sphere. Okay, and we can see now that our fall off is in the shape of a sphere, and as we move it over, what it's doing is it's moving our objects as we go. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just set the size of the sphere to make sure that it's going to affect the whole thing. We'll do that. We'll switch lines back on so you can see. Okay, so as it runs through it, it's lifting each of these segments up as we go. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get rid of this position, and we need to get it to affect the scale. Okay, so we'll try something like 15. Okay, so now instead of it moving the object, it's just affecting the size in the y direction. Okay, so we're getting there. Right, what we need to do now is we need to make it so that this plane effector only affects certain parts of this fracture object. So we're going to the top view. We can see that we've got our polygons here, and what we're going to do is we're going to make a MoGraph selection. If I click into there, okay, you can see now every single polygon has got a red dot, and those red dots mean that that is unselected. Okay, go back to it again. So what I need to do is I want to make the areas that are going to disappear selected here, and the areas that I want to raise and stay there we're going to look at later. Okay, so it's actually the circle here that I want to raise and keep where it is. So everything else I want selected at the moment. So I'm just going to click and drag, hold down shift if you want. You're going to make multiple selections, and we're just going to go around here. You will get to some which are very close to the edges. You have to do a little bit of a think. You might get it wrong, have to undo it on the selection later on, but it should be fairly easy to do. Okay, so that's the ones around the outside. Now I want the ones, now I want the ones in the letters, number, that one, I think that one would be there. Come round. And then again on the star. Looks like some kind of secret message. Okay, something subliminal. So we've got our selection. Now we're going to go to our plane effector, click on the effector, and we've got here as an option called selection. What we can do is we can actually drag our selection into this. Okay, if you want, you can name it. So we'll call this main. In fact, we'll call it random because that's the one that's going to, if I could spell random, obviously, that's the one that's going to have more of a random effect when it goes. Okay, we'll just put that into there. Okay, so you should be able to see that now it is doing exactly the same thing as it did before, except that it's leaving the circles alone. Okay, which is exactly what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another plane effector. Okay, and this one we're going to put inside there. And we'll just make sure that we'll make it a linear effector. We'll just line this one up. Okay, so the idea is with the linear effector, this one is now going to raise these shapes, but it's going to leave them there. Okay, so if I move this, you can see that's what it's doing, but it's not exactly how we want it yet. So we're going to again change the parameters. I'm going to keep the position off, scale on, put it into there. Okay, you can see what it's doing is it's affecting the same objects. Okay, that's because we have this same selection in. So what we need to do is we need to make another selection, and this is a lot quicker. What we're going to do is we're going to clone this tag. We're going to go to MoGraph, MoGraph selection. We're already on here. Click on there. We'll call it raised. We'll go to the tag and we'll invert it. Okay, and we'll automatically select everything that wasn't there before. So what we need to do now, we'll just name these. Plane random and plane raised. Okay, and this one, they're both got random selected, so we'll make sure that this one has got the raised. What we can do now, if we move this, we should see that it will raise that. Okay, like I said before, you might get some rogue shape. Okay, so that means that we need to have a look at what's being selected here. So if we just go to MoGraph selection, we get rid of that. We go to that one, we include it. Okay, this one we've missed out. Do it again. Okay, and we've got that. What I am going to do is I'm just going to increase the amount to 30 for both. See what that does. On one. Okay, and we can see that what we've got is quite effective. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a floor. And at this point, it's probably a good idea to put our objects in the middle here, so it's a little bit easier to work with. We're going to get our floor object, and we are going to raise it so that we can't see the objects anymore, just like that. So what we do now is hide these. As we move these, you start to see the effect that we're looking for. Okay, so the idea is that we can animate that and it will work automatically. Okay, there's one more thing I'm going to add to this. I'm going to add another effector. It's going to be a delay effector. Okay, we just need to make sure that in the effectors chain it's at the top. Okay, and it should just give it a little bit of a nicer effect. Okay, so what we're going to do is we've got 300 frames in our animation. We're going to get our effector. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to angle it slightly. Okay, so the good thing is with this, we can make all of these tweaks and all of the other settings that we've got will still work. Okay, so the idea is that we're going to get it come up from one corner rather than just flat. So we go back to perspective and stick the floor object in. We want to get this so that it just starts just before it starts properly. Okay, so we'll animate it over 10 frames and then we'll try and time it a bit better. So we'll do that. That's not a good idea. Hold on Control and we'll click record for these positions. We'll go to frame 10. We'll move until it's finished. It's there. We'll record our frames again. Okay, now we're just going to see, I would say maybe 80 frames. So we'll just open the timeline up. We'll take that to 80 frames and see what it does. Okay, maybe even still too fast. That's better. So, next thing we need to do, if we hide this, we're going to sort out our camera. Okay, I'm going to do this with a morph camera, or camera morph, because I've got version 15 here. If you're using something older, you'll have to do it manually and animate it along a spline, but the effect will be the same. So just make sure we've got a decent resolution. That'll do. Okay, we don't want to line it up with a small resolution and then change it at the end, because it will change our start and end positions. Okay, so we're going to create a camera here. We'll call this camera 1. Okay, we're then going to go through to, switch it off for a sec, we're then going to go through to our final object. I'm going to create another camera, oddly called camera 3. That's just so that if we decide we want one in the middle, it will all make sense. Okay, so with those two cameras selected, we're going to go, two cameras selected, we're going to go to camera morph, and just in case, again, in case we want some more cameras attached, you can see it's got camera 1 and camera 3 here. We're going to change this to multi-morph and drag them in again. Okay, that's purely because if we don't like the way it goes, we can add one in the middle, and it will be quite easy. So if I now go to blend, okay, this is what's going to happen. Okay, so we'll go to frame 0, and we'll record the blend at 0. Play the animation. Let's go to 130. We'll change the blend to 100. Record it. Okay, we'll come back, we'll hide the cameras, stop them getting in the way, and then we'll press play. Okay, so we've got the main part of the animation done. What we need to do now is we need to get that effect that we had before. So I'm going to look at some lighting. Okay, so what I've actually done is loaded up a scene that I've had a bit more of a play with. Can't plagiarise, I must admit. The lighting in this scene is default from the MStudio Toolbox. I think it's 2.1, which is excellent. So I'll stick the link on here for you guys. Basically what we've got, aside from all these materials down here, we've actually applied a material to the fracture object, a material to the sky, and a material to the floor. Okay. Good thing about this is they've attached some espresso to the floor, so it will adjust different properties as we go, which is really useful, and if you can cheat, why not? Okay, so the actual effect that I've gone for is the blue. Now what I've done is, quite painstakingly, I've been through these objects. I'll just switch off this camera for a sec. I've been through these objects and I've made selections. Okay, it might be easier to see in top view. Okay, and I've made selections where it's an object that is part of these blue circles that we're working with. So I've attached the white material to the fracture object so that it attaches to everything, and then I have attached the white material again to the shapes on the blue circles, but I've also made a selection of the very top polygon and I've applied this blue material. Okay, if you guys haven't done selections, let's just have a look, really good. We can basically set a selection for any polygon or group of polygons in an object and apply a material to those only. Okay, it's very straightforward, but hopefully you'll have done that already. So the effect, if we go back to our camera, is that as the camera moves, it's exactly the same as we had before, except we've now got this nice blue texture on the top. Okay, and if we go check we've got our good render settings up. Thanks MStudio again. Let me give it a quick render. I'll say quick. Hopefully you'll see quite a nice effect. Got ambient occlusion and global illumination on in here. Also render it out at quite a high res. Okay, obviously when we've got quite a lot of frames, this could take a good while to render, but just come back ever so slightly and we'll render region this time. You can see as it breaks up, you get quite a nice effect. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll go off in Blue Peter style and I'll render it, and this is what the final version will look like.